Paul
question.
and Dan, arch rivals dating back to their high school days, encountered each other one night recently in a restaurant in apparently Akron, Ohio, but I'm going to change it because we got to keep the lore going. Encountered each other one night recently in a restaurant in Anytown, Ohio. The two exchanged insults, and as their insults escalated, they both agreed to step outside to continue the altercation.
Oh, shit. They about to throw down.
A fistfight ensued, in which they threw punches at each other, some of them missing and some of them landing. Dan, sensing that he was losing the fight, pulled a small knife from his pocket.
Oh, shit!
Dan.
Hoping only to scare Paul away, he lunged at Paul with the knife.
Uh-oh.
I also thought you were about to say, hoping to scare him, but unsuccessful. It only enraged Paul even more.
Well, actually, Paul dodged Dan's lunge, and infuriated but not frightened, responded by pulling a handgun from his coat and pointing it at Dan.
What the fuck?
Oh, these guys came prepared. Is this like a bit where they're gonna progressively keep pulling out more lethal stuff? And he pulls out a handgun. He's like, "I have a grenade." Oh yeah. Well, I have a bazooka. Oh yeah. Well, I have a tank. Okay.
Paul, bringing out his best Sean Connery from the Untouchables impression, said, "You brought a knife to a gunfight."
No, that's not in the fucking question.
Of course it's not in the question.
Oh, okay, you had me. I was like, oh fuck, somebody's got some humor here.
I know.
That's me ad-libbing because I love The Untouchables as a movie.
Okay.
If I was writing the question, it would be in the question.
Okay.
Fearing for his life, Dan grabbed Paul's wrist and jerked the gun out of Paul's hand. Unbeknownst to Dan, the gun was not loaded.
Oh shit, he called his bluff!
Dan ran to the parking lot, jumped in his car, and, as he was exiting the parking lot, aimed the car directly at Paul at a high rate of speed.
Fuck!
Oh shit! It is escalating!
He brought a car to a gunfight!
And then Paul hops on his elephant and they charge at each other.
Paul summoned his Gundam. Paul was so frightened that he could not move. No. At the last instant, Dan swerved the car sharply, avoiding an impact with Paul.
Oh, because he really does care, doesn't he?
However, as Dan swerved, the tires of his car spun and sprayed gravel from the parking lot towards Paul, peppering him in the face with small pebbles.
Ooh, ow!
Paul suffered no physical injury aside from some minor contusions caused by the gravel.
Okay.
As he passed Paul, Dan threw Paul's handgun out the window. The gun landed undamaged at Paul's feet.
Here's your gun back, loser.
I was really worried that the gun was going to be damaged. That was
my
biggest concern.
Very important.
Yeah, if anything happens, please let the gun be okay.
It's a priceless unloaded handgun that Paul carries with him to bar fights. What intentional tort claims can Paul bring against Dan? What defenses can Dan assert? And what is the likely outcome of each? Explain fully.
So Paul is the one who got pelted with the rocks, right?
Yes.
He's guilty of the minor contusions.
Yeah.
It's the question where, like, they both got into a fight. Nobody really got hurt from the fight. I mean, they punched each other, so that actually is assault.
No, there's definitely assault on both sides. I'm guessing that if you pull a gun on somebody and know that it's not loaded...
Oh, that's a good question.
Is that considered attempted...
Gun.
Also the strongest ability in Super Smash Bros.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wielded by Joker. It's gun.
What is the answer, Bridge?
So what you're obviously looking at here is so what's interesting is you want to approach this from a self-defense instinct, from a self-defense standpoint to see if someone has defenses, but there's no clear instigator. And usually when it comes to self-defense, it's the person instigating can't claim self-defense because they're the instigator. But in this one, we don't have a clear answer over who instigated it. They both just seem to go at each other. Now, here's the one thing though: an instigator can claim self-defense if the other person heightens the level of threat.
Oh.
Let's say for theoretical sake, Paul was definitely the instigator. The thing is that punching is, while dangerous, not deadly. Once Dan pulls the knife, a deadly weapon, even if Paul was the instigator, he can claim self-defense because Dan upped the ante from non-lethal to lethal.
Interesting.
Yeah, he called his bluff and he raised.
So once Dan pulls out the knife, it sort of switches back to where now Dan is the instigator of this higher level of threat. And now Paul can defend himself with a reasonable gun. With a reasonable amount of force.
Right.
With a reasonable amount of gun.
So again, the next question is obviously, is an unloaded gun a reasonable amount of force?
Right.
Now again, the two interesting things are obviously a gun is more dangerous than a knife.
Right.
But at the same time, both are deadly weapons.
Right.
Both can kill. So theoretically, since both are considered since a knife can be considered deadly force, even if it's a small knife, still kill someone with a switchblade, doesn't matter.
Right.
So since Dan technically brought out deadly force, Paul can respond with deadly force in kind.
Okay.
But also worth noting, Dan's force wasn't even deadly. I mean, Paul's force wasn't even deadly in return because the gun was not loaded.
Yeah.
So either way, Dan probably is in the okay for the self-defense here.
Gotcha.
Because he was responding deadly force with the threat of deadly force that wasn't even deadly force because it's an unloaded gun.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, what's interesting, though, is once Dan sees the gun, you can almost argue that the ante was upped again. Because now there's guns involved. So now, in a sense, Dan sort of has the right to defend himself with reasonable force.
So this is wild.
So the law...
It's this weird sort of thing where you have to gauge, who has the right to defend based on what force is being used against them. And again, like we're joking, when the ante keeps getting upped, you keep being allowed to respond with equal force back.
This is a great question, actually.
the law does, in fact, account for comedy. That's what I'm hearing.
The law has a sense of humor, at least. We can agree.
That's what it sounds like. They're like, okay, what happened next? Well, he summoned his satellite laser to shoot him. That does take it to a whole new level. Well, after that, he phoned in the army of Blurgsnarg and the alien armada.
Hey, you remember Dr. Zerm? He's the leader of the Blurgsnarg army. He's the doctor of the Blurgsnarg army.
Fuck, that's deep lore.
So just to finish this out, so again, Dan disarms Paul by taking the gun. So now Dan has a gun, but Paul knows it's unloaded. Then Dan, I guess, tries to run Paul over, but swerves the last second.
Right.
So then there's a very weird, is that attempted murder? I guess not, because he was intending to not hit him.
Yeah.
But there's still probably a reckless endangerment thing because you drove a car at someone.
Right.
I don't know if attempted murder sticks against Dan because he did swerve out of the way, but there's probably still a reckless endangerment thing.
Right.
And then there's probably an extra battery charge for spraying him with pebbles.
Yeah.
Can you imagine at the end of all this shit, you got to pay a $50 fine and do 7 days of community service because pebbles hit your rival after he pulled a gun on you.
Also, it's really funny because while the gun landed undamaged seems like a completely pointless thing to add, if you were answering this question, you would comment that because the gun was undamaged, it doesn't count as there's no damage to property charge.
Huh.
So even though that fact seems superfluous, if the gun was damaged, you would have to analyze whether there's it's called trespass to chattel when you damage someone else's property.
Right.
So you would mention that trespass to chattel wouldn't apply here because he didn't really steal the gun. He disarmed it, then gave it back to him as he was running away.
Well, Pridge, do we find him guilty of attempted gun?
I think what this comes down to is Dan's probably liable for battery. He's probably liable for maybe attempted murder for trying to stab him with a knife, and then definitely for battery for hitting him with a gravel, I'd argue. But that's probably it.
I mean, either way, they both need a timeout.
Yes.
That's the longest. They both need to go in the corner for a couple hours.
They're both sentenced to go to anger management together, like that Adam Sandler movie, Anger Management.
And then they learn to love each other, and then they end up being a couple.
No, that's
I don't even know if I've seen that movie.
That's I Pronounce You Chuck and Larry. It's the wrong movie.
Oh, my bad.
This week on Save Data. Know your Adam Sandler movie.
God. I hate that we reference 2 Adam Sandler movies back to back like that.
This is how I win.
50 First Dates. There's the third one.